Sophia Carter, a 14-year-old girl, lived a life full of bravery, strength, and deep emotional connections, especially with her mother, Karen, and their loyal Belgian Malinois, Max. The Carters' story was one of love, loss, and sacrifice, deeply rooted in their bond with Max, a dog trained for military combat who was entrusted with the task of protecting them after the untimely death of Sophia's father, John Carter, a CIA officer. John Carter had been an elite officer in the CIA, known for his intelligence and cunning in tackling dangerous missions. However, it was his final assignment that sealed his fate. John was tragically killed while trying to dismantle an international crime syndicate. Before he died, he made one last request: for Max, the dog who had been his loyal companion in the toughest operations, to stay with his family and protect them at all costs. John knew the world he worked in was dangerous, and he had a premonition that there would come a time when his family would need protection. He trusted Max, knowing that the Belgian Malinois, with his keen instincts and rigorous training, would be able to carry out the task of keeping his loved ones safe. Max had been more than just a working dog. To the Carters, he was a constant source of comfort, strength, and stability after John's passing. When John's death left a hole in their hearts, Max became the thread that tied them together. Despite the loss of their husband and father, Karen and Sophia found solace in the presence of Max. The bond they shared with him was unlike any other. Max had been there for them in times of silence, offering his companionship when words could not capture the depth of their grief. As Karen struggled with the absence of her beloved husband, and Sophia grappled with the absence of her father, it was Max who provided the emotional support that helped them endure their hardest days. Sophia, who was just a young teenager, had a unique connection with Max. She had grown up watching her father train the dog, learning how to trust Max's instincts. They were more than just family members. Max had become her protector. Though only 14, Sophia already understood the weight of responsibility, and with Max by her side, she felt that she had someone who would never let her down. His protective instincts were finely honed through years of military service, but it was his heart that made him truly exceptional. As Max stood vigil by their door, he was not just a dog guarding the house, but a symbol of Sophia's father's love and his promise to keep her and Karen safe, no matter the cost. Karen often reflected on the days following John's death, remembering the letter he had left for her. It contained detailed instructions for what to do in case the unthinkable ever happened, and it reaffirmed what she already knew deep down, that Max was their safeguard. John had gone to great lengths to ensure they would never feel truly alone, even in his absence. He knew the world he lived in was filled with threats, and it was a matter of time before those threats would come knocking on the door. His parting gift to his family, Max, was more than just protection. It was the promise that Sophia and Karen would always have someone who loved them and would fight to keep them safe. Life with Max brought a sense of security that was rare in a world filled with uncertainty. He not only provided physical protection, but also offered the kind of emotional support that Karen and Sophia desperately needed. For Sophia, the bond with Max became a source of strength. After the loss of her father, she had no choice but to mature quickly. But Max, with his steady gaze and unwavering loyalty, allowed her to remain grounded. He was the one who helped her feel connected to her father even after his death. Sophia knew that every time she looked into Max's eyes, she was reminded of the love her father had for her, and the promise he made to always watch over her. Max's presence was not limited to physical protection. He also stood as a reminder of the love and sacrifice that had shaped Sophia's childhood. While Karen worked to make ends meet and cope with the loss of her husband, Sophia often found herself seeking refuge in Max's companionship. Together, the three of them formed a small but resilient family, weathering the storms of grief with each passing day. And though Sophia's life was still full of the uncertainties that come with growing up, She always found a sense of peace in Max's presence. He was her constant, her protector, and her reminder that love could endure even the harshest of circumstances. Max's role in the family extended beyond just being a dog. He was a symbol of the love John had for his family and a tangible piece of his legacy. Each time Karen would wake up to see Max sitting by the front door, or when Sophia would catch Max's watchful gaze while playing in the yard, they knew they were not truly alone. Max was more than a dog. He was a guardian, a testament to the strength of family bonds and the unwavering loyalty that ran through their veins. It wasn't just the bond between a human and their pet. It was a bond built on trust, sacrifice, and a promise that would never be broken. Their quiet life, marked by the occasional sadness of losing John, had been transformed by the loyalty and love that Max gave without question. Karen and Sophia often found themselves at peace in ways they never thought possible after John's death, all because of Max. They knew he wasn't just doing his job when he protected them. He was honoring a promise that John had made, ensuring they would always feel loved and safe. Together, they faced the future, knowing that no matter what happened, the love and bond they shared would always be their greatest strength. Max was not just a protector. He was the embodiment of a father's love for his family and a daughter's unshakable trust in the one who would never let her down. Through Max, Karen and Sophia learned the true meaning of resilience, love, and the unbreakable ties that bind a family together, no matter the distance between them and those they have lost. One day, as Sophia was getting ready to head out, Max, the Belgian Malinois, suddenly became agitated. His usually calm demeanor shifted, his muscles tense, and his sharp eyes darted around the house, focusing on the strange cars that had begun circling their block. It wasn't just a casual observation. Max's body language screamed something was wrong. He barked sharply, each sound echoing through the quiet morning, as he paced back and forth at the windows, keeping his watch on the unfamiliar vehicles. His instinctive wariness of the outside world was now on high alert, and his behavior was enough to set off alarm bells in Karen's mind. Karen, a seasoned military nurse accustomed to chaos and high-stakes environments, could sense it. Something was off, and it wasn't just Max's behavior. She watched closely as he moved from window to window, his eyes fixed on the vehicles that lingered on the street. They didn't seem to belong to anyone with a legitimate reason to be there. The cars came and went, but always circled back. It wasn't a random occurrence. It was deliberate, too consistent. There was something more going on here, something unsettling, the creeping feeling of being watched, of being targeted. Sophia, who had grown used to Max's protective nature, had never seen him act this way before. She paused at the doorway, her eyes flicking nervously to her mother, who seemed increasingly on edge. Both of them had sensed the tension in the air, though neither truly understood the full extent of the danger. Sophia, still young and more trusting, believed it could just be an overreaction, a protective dog doing what he was trained to do. But when she saw the look in her mother's eyes, a silent, knowing gaze of someone who had been trained to recognize danger, Sophia felt the weight of the situation settle in her chest. Karen's instincts, sharpened through years of military training and service, didn't fail her. She could feel the change in the air, the familiar sense of foreboding that had haunted her in past missions. Her thoughts immediately flashed to the worst-case scenarios. Could it be that enemies from John's past were closing in? Had they come for her family, the one thing John had fought to protect? Her mind raced, running through one horrifying possibility after another. But one thing was certain. Max wasn't barking at shadows. He was sensing something real, something they couldn't ignore. Max's behavior was deliberate, methodical. He wasn't reacting to every passing vehicle out of instinct. He was assessing the situation with military precision. Karen couldn't help but admire his ability to read the situation, even as her own heart pounded in her chest. The house, once a haven of safety, now felt like a ticking time bomb, its silence suffocating, filled with the anticipation of something terrible. The vehicles kept passing, slow and deliberate, like predators circling. Karen couldn't shake the feeling of growing unease. She moved to the kitchen window, trying to watch without being noticed. Her fingers gripped the counter as she saw them again. The black SUVs, their tinted windows hiding their occupants. They weren't just passing through anymore. They were waiting for something or someone. Taking a deep breath, Karen steadied herself. She had to remain calm for Sophia, for the family. She couldn't let fear take over now, not with Max on high alert, keeping watch over them. Max barked again, his voice sharp, demanding. This time it wasn't just about guarding the house, it was about guarding them. His instincts screamed that something was wrong. Karen knew better than to dismiss him. The thought that John's enemies had tracked them down lingered like a dark cloud. Could they have discovered their location? Did they know about the evidence John had left behind? The world of espionage and crime was vast, and it was only a matter of time before the past caught up with them. Sophia, who had been standing in the doorway with her backpack slung over her shoulder, felt her stomach tighten. Max's strange behavior made her uneasy. But it wasn't until she saw her mother's face, pale and serious, that she realized the severity of the situation. This wasn't just a false alarm. The fear in her mother's eyes mirrored the dread slowly creeping into Sophia's own body. She trusted Max. She had witnessed his protective instincts, his ability to keep them safe time and time again. But now, she felt a fear that went beyond the unknown. She was scared, not of the threat itself, but of what was to come next. Sophia sat silently by the window, her eyes locked on Max as he continued to patrol the house. Her heart raced as she saw the black SUVs pulling away, only to circle back once more. She could feel the tension in the air, thick with the anticipation of something unknown. Max was still on alert, his watchful eyes scanning every corner of the yard. Sophia's thoughts were a whirlwind. Who were these people? What did they want? And most importantly, why were they watching them? Max moved to the back door, his body still tense, muscles rippling as he kept an eye on the street. Sophia could almost feel his pulse, the calm steadiness of his presence giving her the strength to face the unknown. She glanced at her mother and saw the same determination in her eyes. They weren't alone, and together with Max by their side, they would find a way to survive whatever danger was coming their way. But one thing was certain. The past was closing in on them, and they had no choice but to face it head-on. Damian Black, the leader of an international crime syndicate, had long suspected that John Carter, the CIA officer who had died under mysterious circumstances, had uncovered valuable evidence before his death. Damian's suspicions were correct. John had been working on exposing a web of corruption that reached into the highest echelons of power. But now, with John gone, Damian was determined to get his hands on the evidence, and the key to accessing it lay in the hands of John's family, specifically his daughter, Sophia. Damian's plan was simple yet terrifying. Kidnap Sophia, force the family to reveal the location of the crucial evidence, and eliminate any threats to his organization. The moment he learned of the Carters' whereabouts, he set his plan into motion, sending his men to break into their home under the cover of nightfall. They had no idea what they were up against. As the black SUVs pulled up to the Carter residence, their headlights slicing through the darkness, Max, the Belgian Malinois, was already alert. His keen senses detected the presence of the intruders long before they even set foot on the property. The familiar sense of unease washed over him like a tidal wave, his instincts going into full combat mode. Max had been trained for situations like this. He was far more than just a guard dog. He was a warrior, trained to neutralize threats without hesitation. Karen, who had sensed the building tension in the air for the past few days, now felt an almost electric current of dread running through her. She had already taken precautions, locking the doors, securing the windows, but nothing could have prepared her for what was coming. She had been waiting for a sign, and now it was here. The intruders were at the doorstep. The door rattled violently as the first wave of men forced their way inside. Max's response was instantaneous. With the precision of a seasoned soldier, Max lunged forward, knocking the first assailant off his feet with a powerful strike. The man fell to the ground with a loud thud, momentarily stunned. But before he could react, Max was already moving on to the next. His movements were calculated and swift, targeting the pressure points and neutralizing each threat without a moment's hesitation. Sophia's heart raced as she heard the commotion outside her bedroom door. She grabbed her phone, her fingers shaking as she tried to dial for help, but Karen was already ahead of her. The sound of shuffling feet and muffled grunts filled the house as Max continued to defend them with relentless efficiency. Karen motioned for Sophia to stay quiet and stay low. Every second counted. Sophia could hear Max's growls and the sounds of men being incapacitated by the skilled dog. She was scared, terrified even, but at the same time, a strange sense of security washed over her. Max was there. Max would protect them. He was their shield, the only thing standing between them and the chaos unfolding inside their home. Every time Max took down another intruder, the tension in the air grew heavier, the silence between each strike deafening. "Stay down," Karen whispered urgently, her eyes scanning the room for an escape route. But as the seconds ticked by, she realized there was no safe way out. They were trapped in their own home. Max was their only hope. The men who had broken into the house were part of a highly trained team, people who had made it their life's work to eliminate threats quickly and quietly. But they had underestimated the Carters. They had underestimated Max. The dog didn't just neutralize the intruders, he paralyzed them, ensuring they couldn't retaliate. With every carefully executed move, Max disabled another assailant, taking them out of the equation one by one. The men were caught off guard, unable to comprehend the ferocity of the dog's attack. They were trained to fight human opponents, not to deal with a highly specialized military dog whose only mission was to protect the family he loved. Sophia's thoughts were racing. She knew she had to move, to help her mother, but she couldn't tear her eyes away from Max's swift and efficient attacks. The way he moved, fluid and purposeful like a shadow in the night, was mesmerizing. In that moment, Sophia realized just how much her father had entrusted to this dog. He wasn't just a pet. He was a soldier, a protector, a guardian who had been trained to fight for her and her mother. Max's next move was to block the hallway, ensuring no one could reach Sophia or Karen. His body was positioned between them and the intruders, his back arched, ready to spring into action at the slightest provocation. The attackers had no idea what they were dealing with. They had underestimated both the dog and the family he protected. Karen, meanwhile, was trying to maintain her composure. She needed to think clearly. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone again, her hands trembling. But she managed to send a quick text to Detective Parker, alerting him to the situation and requesting backup. They needed help, and they needed it fast. Sophia clutched her phone tightly, her body trembling with a mix of fear and awe. The intensity of the moment was overwhelming, but she kept telling herself, Max was here. Max would get them through this. The house was filled with chaos, the sounds of Max's growls, the groans of incapacitated men, the thundering of footsteps as they tried to regroup. It felt like the world was closing in around them. The walls seemed to shrink as each second passed. The tension was suffocating. "Max, stay with me," Karen whispered, but she didn't need to say it. Max knew what to do. He had been trained for moments like this, and he wasn't going to let them down. As the last of the intruders was taken down, the house fell eerily silent. Max stood guard at the top of the stairs, watching the hallway as though nothing could breach his defenses. His chest heaved with every breath, but his eyes remained focused, alert for any further threats. Sophia, her heart still pounding, allowed herself a moment of relief. They were safe, for now. But Karen knew this was only the beginning. The men who had come for them were part of something bigger, something more dangerous, and they weren't going to stop until they got what they wanted. But Karen also knew that as long as Max was by their side, they would survive this storm. She could see it in the dog's eyes. He wasn't just protecting them from physical harm. He was protecting the family's future, ensuring that no matter what, they wouldn't be broken. Sophia's hands trembled, but she managed to smile at Max. "You saved us," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. The bond between her mother, and Max had never felt more real, more unbreakable. They had survived the night together, and they would face whatever came next as a family. But in the back of Karen's mind, one question lingered. How long before the next attack came? In the midst of the chaos, when every second felt like a lifetime, Max was more than just a protector. He was Sophia's only true friend. As the sounds of footsteps and distant shouts filled the air, Sophia realized that without Max, she would have been utterly powerless. The threat of danger seemed overwhelming, but in the presence of the Belgian Malinois, there was a sense of calm amid the storm. Max's instincts were guiding him, just as they had been trained, but in this moment, it was more than just his training. It was his loyalty and deep connection to Sophia and her family. Sophia could feel the bond between them growing stronger by the second. It wasn't just a matter of safety, it was a matter of trust. As Max moved through the house, defending her and her mother, he wasn't just following orders. He was fulfilling the promise he had made to her father, John, to protect the family. Sophia remembered the countless lessons her father had taught her about trust, love, and family, values that had been ingrained in her since childhood. She could hear his voice in her head, reminding her that love meant standing firm in the face of danger, that trust was the foundation of any relationship, and that family came before everything. But now, she wasn't just hearing those lessons. She was living them. And standing beside her as her protector was Max, the living embodiment of her father's teachings. He wasn't just a dog. He was the promise of her father's love for her and her mother. With each movement, Max communicated more than protection. He communicated trust, loyalty, and an unbreakable bond. Sophia's heart swelled with emotion as she watched Max's every move, the silent but profound connection they shared evident in the way they operated as one. Max's actions were a direct reflection of the love her father had for her, the kind of love that pushed him to ensure her safety, even from beyond the grave. There was one moment, in particular, that stood out in Sophia's mind, one that would stay with her forever. As the attackers advanced, intent on kidnapping her, Max placed himself between her and the intruders. It wasn't just a protective stance. It was an act of pure selflessness. Max was not going to let anything harm Sophia. His body was tense, every muscle coiled as he positioned himself between her and the attackers, ready to act at a moment's notice. As the men advanced, they were no match for the dog's incredible training. In an instant, Max moved with the precision of a soldier, knocking the attackers off balance and disarming them with controlled force. He wasn't there to kill, but to protect, neutralizing each threat with surgical precision. In that moment, Sophia realized just how much Max meant to her. He wasn't just a dog. He wasn't just there to keep her safe. He was her protector, her family, and in many ways, her father's final gift to her. She thought back to the day her father had passed away, to the moment when he had entrusted Max to her care. He had always said that Max would watch over her and her mother. And now, standing in the middle of the danger, Sophia understood what her father had meant. Max was there to protect them, no matter the cost. Tears welled up in Sophia's eyes as she stood there, watching Max in action. His movements were precise, controlled, and relentless. He was fighting for her mother, for their family. Sophia had always known Max was special, but in this moment, she saw the depth of his loyalty. The bond between them, built on years of shared experiences and trust, was irreplaceable. In that moment, Sophia understood that no matter what happened, Max would always be by her side, protecting her, guarding her, and loving her. Karen, standing nearby, could see the emotional weight of the situation pressing down on Sophia. She reached out and placed a hand on her daughter's shoulder, a silent gesture of reassurance. But as much as she wanted to comfort Sophia, Karen knew that in this moment, the only thing that could truly protect them was Max. The dog's presence was a constant reminder of the promises made, the love that transcended even the greatest dangers. And as the battle raged on, Karen knew that with Max's protection, they had a chance to survive. In the heat of the battle, when Max had incapacitated the last of the attackers, the house fell eerily quiet. But the silence was not one of relief. It was the silence of war. Max continued to patrol the house, his eyes constantly scanning for any new threats. His job was not done yet. Sophia, still shaken from the chaos, stepped forward, her gaze fixed on Max. She slowly walked toward him and knelt down, wrapping her arms around the dog. In that moment, there was no need for words. Max's steady gaze and the way he leaned into her affirmed everything she felt. "You did it, Max," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You saved us." Max responded with a soft growl, but it wasn't a threatening sound. It was a sound of reassurance, of love. The connection between the two of them had always been strong, but in that moment, it was unbreakable. Max had protected her, and in doing so, had proven the depth of the bond they shared. Sophia's heart swelled with gratitude and love as she stroked Max's fur. She realized that no matter where life took her, no matter what obstacles lay ahead, she would always have Max by her side. The emotional bond between them was more than just a relationship between a girl and her dog. It was a deep, unwavering partnership forged in the fires of adversity. Max was not just her protector. He was her family, her companion, and the last gift her father had given her. As the night drew to a close and the immediate danger passed, Sophia and Karen sat down together, exhausted but grateful. They knew this was far from over, but for the first time in hours, they allowed themselves to breathe, knowing that with Max by their side, they had a fighting chance. Together, they were stronger than any threat that might come their way. Together, they would survive. Together, they were a family, and no force in the world could tear that apart. As the investigation deepened, Sophia and Karen began to uncover the terrifying scope of the conspiracy that had been set in motion by Damian Black. It wasn't just a criminal gang that had targeted them. It was a powerful network of international organizations, all linked by a web of corruption and secrecy that stretched across borders and deep into governments. John Carter, before his untimely death, had managed to expose a fraction of this dark underworld, and now his family was caught in the crossfire. Max, the ever-loyal protector, was their guiding force through the shadows. The Belgian Malinois led the Carters to safe locations, places where John had hidden critical evidence. Each step felt like a life-or-death decision as the pressure mounted with every move they made. The sense of urgency was suffocating. They couldn't afford to make a mistake. The world they once knew had disappeared, replaced by the grim reality that every second counted. The tension was palpable. Each sound outside their hiding places seemed amplified, each decision weighed with immense consequence. And as much as they tried to keep their composure, both Sophia and Karen were acutely aware that the walls were closing in. Sophia couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, that the enemies who had come after her father were now after her and her mother. Damian Black had made them his final target, and Sophia soon realized that they weren't just pawns in his game. They were the keys to unlocking the full extent of his operations, and if he couldn't have the evidence, he would destroy the only people who could reveal it. Max had been their first line of defense, but now the emotional toll was starting to catch up with Sophia. As they moved through the dark, forgotten places her father had once worked to expose, she couldn't help but feel the weight of his absence. In the dim light of a hidden room, Karen turned to her daughter, holding up a file she had found among the evidence. Inside, there were names, dates, encrypted documents, proof of an international conspiracy that not only ran illegal operations across the globe, but also infiltrated governments at the highest levels. John Carter had been close to exposing everything before his tragic death. His suspicions about the link between world leaders, criminal syndicates, and military contractors had been right all along. The documents were undeniable. The scope of what John had uncovered, the very conspiracy he'd been killed for, was beyond anything Sophia could have imagined. Yet as they continued to sift through the papers and connect the dots, the reality hit harder than ever. Sophia had always admired her father, but she never imagined the depth of danger he'd been up against, nor did she realize how deep the betrayal went. The names on those documents, leaders, generals, businessmen, these were the people John had fought to expose. And now, they were the ones hunting her and her mother. It was more than a mere investigation. It was a fight for survival, a race against time. The more they uncovered, the more dangerous their situation became. Damian Black, knowing that they were inching closer to the truth, was not going to let them go easily. He had agents everywhere, and it wasn't long before the Carters realized they were being tracked. The tense moments of hiding, the feeling of being cornered, the sweat on their brows. This was no longer a game of cat and mouse. It was survival. And yet, through it all, Max remained steady. The dog was the one thing Sophia could still trust, and every time she looked at him, she felt a little stronger. The dog had been trained for moments like this. His instincts were razor sharp, and his loyalty to her and her mother was unshakable. One evening, as they sought refuge in another hidden safe house, Sophia and Karen took a brief moment to rest. The room was dim, with only the flicker of a candle providing light. Sophia stared out the window, her mind racing with thoughts of the last few days. She could still feel the sting of losing her father. It wasn't just the pain of grief that gnawed at her heart. It was the reality that her father had died fighting an invisible war, a war they were now caught in. The more she learned, the more she realized how isolated she felt. There was no one else to trust, no allies to lean on. The whole world seemed to be against them. But there was Max, steadfast, always watching, always protecting. He was more than just a dog to Sophia. He was a link to her father, a connection to the love and trust John had placed in him. Every time Max looked at her, it was as though her father's spirit was there, reassuring her that they would make it through this. She had no choice but to trust Max, just as she had to trust the lessons her father had taught her about love, loyalty, and perseverance. She had to survive, for her father, for Max, and for her mother. As the days passed, Sophia and Karen found themselves at a crossroads. The evidence they had uncovered was enough to expose Damian Black and his global operation, but that same evidence also painted a target on their backs. The deeper they dug, the more danger they found themselves in. They knew that Damian Black would stop at nothing to keep them from revealing the truth. But Sophia couldn't back down. She couldn't let the sacrifices her father had made be in vain. One night, as they hid in yet another safe house, Sophia had a moment of clarity. She realized that it wasn't just about surviving anymore, it was about justice. It was about bringing down the network of corruption and evil that had taken everything from them. And if she had to put herself at risk to make sure that happened, she would do it. Max would be with her every step of the way. They had uncovered the conspiracy, yes, but the battle wasn't over. The fight was just beginning. And Sophia knew that facing the truth would be the hardest thing she'd ever do, but it was the only way forward. The fight for justice wasn't just about exposing the truth, it was about taking back the life that had been stolen from them. Sophia, with Max by her side, would see this through, no matter the cost. After the shocking truths were laid bare and the criminals who had threatened their lives were finally captured, the Carter family found themselves standing at the edge of a new beginning. The storm had passed, but the emotional scars were not so easily erased. Yet, with the dangerous web of deception and corruption unraveled, there was hope for healing. Max, the ever-loyal Belgian Malinois, stood as not only a protector but also a silent, steady companion in their journey toward recovery. He had not just kept them safe from physical harm, he had become an integral part of their emotional recovery. His presence was a reminder of the strength and love that still existed, even after everything they had been through. In the months following their harrowing experience, Sophia and Karen found solace in the small, everyday moments that they once took for granted. The house, once filled with the echoes of danger, began to feel like home again. Sophia, while still carrying the heavy burden of losing her father and the trauma of what had happened, found herself slowly but surely healing. And with Max by her side, she realized that the road to recovery wasn't a solitary one. They were a family, bound not just by blood, but by love and loyalty. Max, who had once been a guardian, was now their source of comfort. His unconditional love was the bridge between the chaos of the past and the peace they were starting to find. Sophia often reflected on the immense toll the events had taken on her. She had come face to face with death, betrayal, and loss, but as time passed, she began to understand that the true victory lay not in surviving the storm, but in how they rebuilt their lives afterward. What truly mattered now was the connection between her, Karen, and Max. Despite all the darkness they had endured, it was this bond that had kept them going. They had faced the worst together, and now, together, they were learning to embrace a new, quieter life. They had survived the storm, but their real journey was in the healing that followed. One of the most healing things for Sophia was the quiet moments spent with her mother and Max. Whether it was the simple act of sharing a meal or taking walks together through the neighborhood, these little moments became sacred to them. The noise of the outside world no longer mattered as much. The peace they found in each other's company and in the companionship of Max was something they had never truly appreciated before the attack. They had always been close, but the trauma they had endured had deepened their connection in ways they hadn't expected. There were days when Sophia would watch Max as he stood guard, his eyes scanning the area with the same vigilance that had once saved their lives. But now, instead of feeling the weight of fear, Sophia found comfort in knowing that Max was always there for them. The relationship between them had evolved. He was no longer just a military dog trained for battle, he was family. And Sophia couldn't help but feel a profound sense of gratitude for everything Max had done. He had not only protected them from harm, but had also helped them find their way back to peace. Max had witnessed their pain and had shared in their triumphs. He was not just a dog. He was their partner in rebuilding their lives. One sunny afternoon, Sophia, Karen, and Max went for a walk in the park near their home. The day was calm, with the warm light of the sun casting long shadows across the grassy fields. They walked together as they had done many times before, but now it felt different. They had been through so much, and yet here they were, stronger and more united than ever. Sophia marveled at how the world seemed to have slowed down, how the simple act of walking together, without the looming threat of danger, felt like a small miracle. As they walked, Max trotted happily beside them, his tail wagging with the joy of being free to run and explore. For a moment, Sophia allowed herself to simply be in the present. She watched Max as he moved gracefully through the grass, his every movement an embodiment of the strength and loyalty that had kept them alive. Her mother, Karen, walked beside her, the two of them exchanging quiet words of comfort, as if the weight of the past had been lifted, if only for a moment. This was their new beginning. Sophia knew that the journey to healing wouldn't be easy, and there would be difficult days ahead. But with Max and her mother by her side, she felt like she could face anything. The past would always be a part of them, but it no longer controlled their lives. Instead, it had become the foundation on which they would build something stronger, a life rooted in love, trust, and the bond they shared. The story ended not with a dramatic final confrontation, but with a quiet, profound moment of peace, a family united and whole again. Sophia, Karen, and Max stood as a testament to the power of love and loyalty in the face of unimaginable adversity. Through their shared struggle, they had not only survived, but had come out the other side more connected, more resilient, and more aware of what truly mattered. As they continued their journey, hand in paw, they knew that no matter what the future held, they would face it together, stronger, wiser, and forever bonded by the love and loyalty they had for each other. In the end, it wasn't just survival that mattered. It was the love that had guided them through the darkness and into the light. The bond between Sophia and Max, between mother and daughter, would continue to grow, always rooted in the shared belief that love, loyalty, and family were the things worth fighting for. Max had been more than a protector. He had been the bridge to their new life, a life filled with hope, healing, and above all, love. Share your thoughts. We'd love to hear from you. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another amazing story. Together, we can shine a light on the power of doing what's right. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.